You know, in 2025, one single asset just absolutely blew everything else out of the water. And no, it wasn't some hot tech stock or a new crypto. It was silver. That's right, the forgotten metal. It staged one of the most insane rallies we've seen in a long time. And today, we're going to break down exactly how it happened and, more importantly, what could be coming next. All right, let's get into it.
And just to put a number on it, we are talking about a plus 170% return year to date. I mean, come on. To see a move like that in a major commodity is practically unheard of. It caught pretty much everyone, from individual traders all the way to the biggest banks on Wall Street, completely flat-footed.
So that really leads us to the big question, right? How on earth did silver, a metal that's so often just living in gold's shadow, suddenly become the single best performing asset of the entire year? Well, the answer is this incredible story of these colliding forces. You've got this unstoppable demand on one side and some very skeptical big money institutions on the other.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with a bull case, that perfect storm of factors pushing prices up. Then, we'll flip the coin and look at the bear case, checking out Wall Street's big warnings. After that, we'll do a little decoding to see what the smart money is up to. And we'll finish with the million-dollar question, or maybe the $100 question. Is $100 silver a total fantasy, or is it our future?
Okay, first up, let's talk about the bulls. The argument here is that this rally isn't just some random speculative frenzy. No, there are some incredibly powerful, fundamental reasons that suggest this whole thing is not only justified, but might actually have a lot more room to run.
And here's where it gets really interesting. See, silver's demand story isn't about coins and forks anymore. We are talking about the literal building blocks of our future. These next-gen solar cells, they need 50% more silver. The servers that are powering the entire AI revolution, they're eating up to 3 times more silver. And the whole electric vehicle ecosystem, from the cars themselves to the charging stations, it's just soaking up millions and millions of ounces. This is not your grandmother's silver. This is a critical tech metal now.
And this just perfectly illustrates the other side of the coin, supply. Or really the lack of it. For 5 years straight, the world has used more silver than it has mined. The total gap since 2021 is now sitting at about 820 million ounces. To put that into perspective for you, that is basically an entire year's worth of global mine production that is just poof, vanished from stockpiles to feed this insane demand. And believe it or not, that deficit was already there before a new geopolitical bombshell just got dropped.
This quote right here really nails it. See, gold gets dug up and then it gets stored in a vault somewhere. But silver? Silver gets used. It gets consumed. It's put in tiny amounts into billions of devices and solar panels, and most of the time, it's just not economical to recover. So the silver that we're using today, it's effectively gone for good, which makes that supply situation even tighter. But hold on, not everyone is on board this hype train. Let's switch gears to the bear case and see why Wall Street is basically slamming on the brakes, warning everyone that this rally has gone way too far, way too fast. And this slide just captures that great divide perfectly. On one side, you've got Main Street, retail investors. A survey showed 57% of them think silver is going to blow past $100 next year. But then you look at Wall Street, the big banks like BMO Capital Markets, and they're forecasting a price way back down in the mid-50s. This isn't just a small disagreement. They're looking at 2 completely different realities.
Now, the phrase that the bears keep throwing around is blow off top. It's basically what happens when pure euphoria takes over. The price just goes vertical, totally detached from the fundamentals, driven by pure speculation. And it almost always ends in a really sharp, really painful correction. Analysts are pointing to that 40% gain silver had in December alone as a classic textbook sign of this kind of speculative mania.
And they've got some concrete reasons to be worried. First, a technical indicator called the RSI, which just measures momentum, is screaming overbought at a level of 84. Historically, that's a huge red flag. At the same time, these super high prices are forcing companies to do what's called thrifting. They're literally re-engineering products to use less silver. And crucially, the big vaults in London have actually seen a pretty significant inventory top-up, which eases some of that immediate supply crunch.
So, with the bulls and the bears basically at war, how do we get a clearer picture? Well, one way is to peek behind the curtain and look at what the so-called smart money is doing. And we can do that by decoding something called the Commitment of Traders, or COT report.
So this report basically splits everyone in the futures market into 3 main groups. You've got the commercials. These are the industry insiders, the miners, the users. They're often called the smart money. Then you have the large speculators, think hedge funds. And finally, the small speculators, which is basically the retail crowd. And what's fascinating right now is that the COT report is showing this classic standoff. The commercials have built one of the biggest short positions ever, betting the price is going to fall. Meanwhile, the small speculators are almost all in long, buying this rally with both hands. It is the very definition of smart money versus the crowd.
And that brings us to our final section, where we try to put all these pieces together. Because this whole battle between fundamentals and speculation, well, it's now being completely overshadowed by a new geopolitical shockwave: China's stunning decision to restrict its silver exports starting in 2026.
I mean, just look at this table. It tells you everything you need to know about how confused the market is right now. You've got forecasts all over the map, but here's the kicker. Nearly all of these forecasts were made before the world's largest supplier of refined silver, a country that controls up to 70% of the market, decided it was going to turn off the tap. This new era of what people are calling resource nationalism, it could make all these traditional forecasts totally obsolete.
So here's the thing. The question isn't just about a supply deficit versus a speculative bubble anymore. The real question is, what happens when the world's most critical industrial metal gets weaponized by the biggest player in the game? Does that fundamental bull case just become so overwhelmingly powerful that it steamrolls everything else? So ultimately, the verdict for silver in 2026 is this epic battle of incredibly powerful opposing forces. You've got a real structural supply deficit smashing up against extremely overbought charts. You've got unstoppable future-facing demand running into extreme Wall Street caution. But what if a new, even more powerful force just stepped into the ring? What happens when the country that controls the physical supply decides its own industries come first? Well, that just might change the entire game.